Hello. Hopefully you guys are going to be able to hear me. I'm going to basically use this video to go through most of the stuff that the machine does. I know I've been promising it for a long time. The problem with that is the firmware is constantly being updated almost on a daily basis. So I try to sit down and do stuff. And then I'm already out of date by the time I've started doing it. So this is live. It's taken me a long time to set all this gear up, and I don't really have much of an idea what I'm doing. So it's probably going to go completely wrong. I've got Flux in a private chat window to steer me back on the right track if I go completely bananas. I've got to bring the audio back for the S2400 because I've got this crappy ACO driver that keeps crashing. And that should bring it back. Yes, so you can hear that now. I think that's coming out. So yeah, what I'm going to do is go over most of the most asked questions that I get on a daily basis, and I'll try and lay all that to bed. We'll go through the outputs. A lot of the stuff I'm going to talk about, most of you already know anyway. There's not going to be any Grammy Award winning music being made. I'll leave that to all the awesome testers that are already doing stuff. But I'm really going to just sort of go through the mechanical stuff of the machine and talk about, a little bit about the internals and to walk you through the menus and stuff like that to give you a sort of general feel of what the workflow is. I'm going to try and sample in off some vinyl and maybe chop an old beat up, the arm end break, which we all know and love. Like I said, I'm probably going to get a load of stuff wrong, but you'll just have to bear with me. I've promised you this video, and so here it is. It's coming. So first thing we should probably do is I'll give you a walkthrough of the back of the machine, which should come up now, hopefully, and what we're looking at. So obviously we've got 8 individual outs because the machine is an 8-voice machine currently. We've also got an analog mix out, which is a sum, obviously, of all channel outs 1 to 8. We've got 2 phono preamps. And there's a reason that there's 2, which is one that we might be able to use 2 decks for some timecode stuff somewhere down the line in the future. But also, one of those phono preamps runs through a replica of the OG input filtering electronics, whereas phono input 2 does not. And then again, with the same with input 1 and 2 and input 3 and 4. Input 1 and 2 goes through the anti-alias filter, and 3 and 4 does not. MIDI should be quite self-explanatory to you. We've got clock I/O there, which helps with sending clock to things like your Volcas and your old Juno 60s and stuff like that. Full-size SD card. That's a question that I'm asked about all the time: is what's the biggest SD card that the machine can use? I've tested up to a 1 terabyte and had no issues with that at all so far. Then we've got a USB host port. Now, the USB host will allow you to connect up MIDI controllers. It's class compliant, so it'll allow you to connect up your MIDI controllers. Some of those MIDI controllers that have like 16 pads and knobs and faders and stuff like that, but they don't have MIDI ports. There's use for it there. There's use for it down the line if we should make our own peripherals, which might be like, CV and gate stuff for the modular crowd. Even maybe putting in a PC keyboard so that you can use it to type your pattern names and your sample names in and stuff. And then obviously USB device, which although not quite yet, but hopefully by the time it's shipping in a few weeks, we'll be sending audio data back through the USB device port and MIDI, which is already there. Dimensions. It's 18 inches wide by 12 inches deep. A declining slope. It's 5 inches at the back, 3 inches at the front. For everyone in Europe and the UK, that is 46 centimeters wide, 31 centimeters deep, with a declining slope from 13 centimeters to 8 centimeters at the front. And it weighs around about 14 pounds, or that's 6.5 kilograms, thereabouts. It's all completely made out of steel. The side panels are aluminium. My personal unit here is lovely wood, dark walnut, which will be available on the site. They're just not available yet. We'll make an announcement when that's ready. As far as factory content, which is another thing that I'm always asked about, there is an internal flash ROM, which means you won't be able to save your own sounds to it. But when the device is shipping, our famous, beautiful music artists that have all got their units now that are going to be hopefully making some really awesome kits, and those kits will be included with the machine when it ships. Next most asked question is about how long the machine can sample for. And there are some limitations, but I don't think they're going to be particularly limiting to most people. If we go into sampling mode, in almost every screen that we're in on the machine, there's a help button which tells you what's going on, for the most part. So it's like a help along manual. Because the machine's got 64 meg internally, we have to fit the whole sample buffer when you're recording a sample has to fit in there for us to be able to display the waveform. And the maximum amount of audio you can squeeze into 64 meg, you'll get at 26K, which is classic mode, in mono, you're going to get it 21.5 minutes. Going up to the maximum rate, which is 48K in stereo, you'll get 5 minutes and 50 seconds. So, and that's for every sample that you make. In terms of actually playing back samples, it's pretty much unlimited in length, and that depends on how big your SD card is. So I'm going to walk through some of the menus and try and explain what's going on. So when we go into, bear with me, right. So walking through the menus. Metronome, pretty self-explanatory. You can have counting, you can adjust the level, and there's quite comprehensive routing. So you can send it through individual outs, or you can send it to only the headphones. And you can also decide to have only the metronome when it's playing, or only when it's recording, or only when it's sampling, or all of them together. Swing, which we'll get into in a little while. You've got swung on eighth notes, which is how the original did it, and the swing amount. But also unique to this machine is that you can swing each individual track. And as you can see, I'm scrolling down that list for all the different tracks. When you press a pad, and as it does in a lot of menus as well, it will take you straight to that thing. So you can also adjust individually the amount of swing that goes to each one of those tracks. So as I said, the original swung on eighths. We swing on 16ths, and we'll listen to that anyway. Copy, various different things you can do there. Copying patterns, copying tracks into patterns. Pretty self-explanatory. Time signature, we don't really need to talk about that. Setting your pattern length. Erase. Now, when you do erase, you can either erase and type in a pattern number to erase the whole pattern, or you can press a pad. Now, this pattern is currently empty, but you can press a pad at this point, or if you're in step edit mode, you can highlight a note and erase a note that way, just an individual note from a pattern. That's something that I've been asked quite a lot before, is if you can erase just notes out of patterns. Quantize is another thing that we've got, that we can also do individual quantize per track. So this menu again works pretty much how Swing does. You'll notice a little star there next to 64 triplets on the quantize, and that was the equivalent of the classic high res mode, which was the equivalent of their sort of no quantize, I believe. By the way, I do see there's loads of questions, and I will try and get to them at the end, but if I try and answer everything now, this will all just completely go to shit. I'm already nervous enough, so leave me alone. Step edit mode. Now, this is, as I start messing around putting some pattern stuff in, this will fill up, because we'll create a little pattern. I think the first thing that I'll do, that I know everyone wanted me to do a long, long time ago, is sample something in, and then I'll chop it up. Now, I might not do very well at it, especially when there's other people that have been doing it years longer than I have, but let's give it a go. Now, on the input monitoring, I don't need to do the input monitoring now. We'll just go straight to sample. And once we're in sampler mode, what we're going to do is we're going to select our phono input. Over the top of that. So, there we go. Sample is good. Look at that. Beautiful. Now, at this point, it will take us off to the preview window. Now, you could chop it up and do individual slices here, and you could even trim it up to make sure it's all nice and on point and everything, but you don't have to do that, because you can do that afterwards when you load it in if you want to do multi-slice mode. So, we can preview it. So I'm just going to leave that as it is, and what I'm going to do now, again, wherever you are on the machine, I'll take you through real quick what you can do in here. You can scroll through and select your start and end points there, and you can make a cut. So when you save that sample, you've saved your trim points and everything, but we're not going to do that. But reminders, wherever you are, you can press help to tell you what the keys do. Okay, it's always going to be very handy, that. So we're going to save this sample, and just for now, I'm going to save that to a sample folder. Samples, that will do. For text input, we just use the rotary encoder to enter keys and enter letters. And we find the space character, there it is, and save it. Now, at this point, once you save the sample, you can also assign it to a pad. So I'm going to say, okay, I want to assign that to A8, and then press enter. We drop out of sample mode, and there we are with the sample. Now, we sampled in at 26K there, so you're going to get a lot of that grip. Going into the track settings, audio engine is already set to classic, so that's good. So I'm going to show real quick, as quick as I can, that is, to go into doing a slice up of the break. So multi-mode, loop slice, we're on this track. And so what this has done now on this track, as you can see these little segments that it's put across the screen there for us already, and what that does is it's not auto creating slices, it's just working its way through the file. But what we can do here, you can see, so if we single in, you can use old school classic style, which is using the faders to move around the file. But I much prefer just to use the encoder. I find the encoder quicker. Let's get that kick a bit better. That's a crappy kick. So I'm not going to go through this whole file because it will take me 50 odd minutes to get through there. But it gives you an idea of how easy it is just to use the encoder to go in there and just select what you want to do on all your little slices. And you can see that slice. Maybe you can't see it there. I'm sorry about the lights, but you can see there's 2 vertical bars that are moving around the file as I'm doing the sample, playing the sample back. Now, actually, if I load another project up, anyway, that's kind of an overview of slicing. You're going to see other people do a lot more of it soon, I'm sure. I should take you through track settings. So, whenever you want to load something onto a pad, be that from SD card or the internal or whatever, to do what you want to do with the pads, you press the shift. You don't have to hold shift, as I've seen a few people doing. It locks for that first press that you're going to do. So you press shift and you press a pad. Come out of multi-mode. Press shift and a pad, and these are the settings for that track. Now at this point you can go to any one of your pads and you can see at the top there that track settings is changing. So I'm probably going to have to read these out because I didn't realise that they're not really coming out very clearly on the video. So essentially, first item in the list, you've got assign sound. So you can go in there, and this is where you start going and navigating your files. You can either go to internal, which is the internal ROM that I spoke about earlier, and there'll be all the kits in there, or you can go to your SD card. Everything is a turn of the encoder and a press is enter, and these functions are repeated by pressing. You can press enter there. There's a lot of stuff that's sort of repeated, but with just different paradigms of doing it. So at the moment I'm using the encoder, but I could be using the cursor keys to do stuff if I wanted to. Yeah, well, you can load samples in. So I'm going to just go and grab something really quick. Oh, I probably shouldn't show that, should I? I don't know. Is that bad? Let's just load in a kick. So from there, you can clear the sound, or you can move and copy the sound. Now, I'm not going to go through the moving and copying of sounds because that's quite a long-winded process. It's not long-winded to the user, but there's lots of different functions to doing it. When I say that, what I mean is that you can swap, when you go there, you can swap a pad with another pad, you can move it. When you move it, what's going to happen if there's a sound there already? Is it going to insert it, or is it going to shift everything? So there's a lot of different, it's very comprehensive what you can do. Copy and overwrite, and copy and shift everything. You can rename the sample, and I'll get to that later when we can save and load kits. You get a little bit of info about what the sample's doing, and whether you're using it in mono or stereo, hi-fi or classic engine. Now what that's doing is the machine natively runs at 48 kilohertz 24-bit, and the classic audio engine resamples on the fly everything to 26K, and obviously drops 12 bits if it's a 24-bit sample. When you're actually recording in off a vinyl or sample, sorry, when you're sampling and you're running through the filters and everything, you're actually sampling at 26K. Here, very much like the original, you can choose which channel this pad is going out of, and an alternative channel should something else be playing on this channel at the same time. And that's how you would originally do things like choke groups and stuff like that. So you can think about like an open and a closed hi-hat. If you put both of those sounds on the same channel, then the next one that plays is going to choke the one that played before it. You may have noticed from previous videos that there's very little LEDs on the go at the moment. We get a lot of people get a little bit upset about tasting the rainbow and all the Skittle colours and everything. But here you can change your pad colour to whatever you want. That's going to be useful perhaps if you're, grouping bunches of sounds together. If you're using musical loops, you might want to set them to a colour, or all your percussion stuff to another colour, or you can just have it off. There you go, it's black. It's actually slightly on, and if we were in complete darkness, you'd be able to see something there, because when you've recorded a sequence of events, or when you're triggering the S2400 from somewhere else, these pads will flash. They'll light up a white color for the flash of every event. Now that actually only came in a couple of days ago, and because I know people asked about that one quite a lot. It's like, why don't the pads flash? So they do. And so yeah, the color's now set to black, and although you can't really see anything on, in complete darkness, I think you should see a faint flash there to give you a little bit of feedback. Again, so swing amount there is where you can adjust the swing per track just for this pad A1, and also the quantize. Quantize shift, it's been so long since I messed with that. I think what that does is it shifts where your notes are as you're recording them in. I'm going to say something wrong there because it's a long time since I did anything. That was like a long time ago. I should state that at face value, it can often seem that I don't know what I'm talking about with the machine, and to a certain extent, some of that is true, because obviously I've been concentrating on getting them into production and doing the design and all of that stuff. And although I do a lot of testing, not as much as I should do, stuff gets implemented and then I'm 4 firmware versions behind, and it's terrible. I just really want to play with the machine all the time. But most of my time up until now has been spent obviously making it and getting it ready to get to you guys. So I'm sorry if I fumble around with it a little bit. I discussed with you what's on the track settings. I should also walk you through the file menu a little bit as well there. So again, I want to go to the top row of functions of these buttons, which are in the squares. So we press shift to do that. Let's go into the settings menu. We've got some global settings. Now here, pitch resolution is currently set to classic 16, which is obviously a nod back to the OG machine. And what that denotes is the amount of steps that are in the travel of a fader. Now, you've got classic 16, you've got classic 32, which is opening up 32 steps of resolution, semitones, diatonic, and fine. And fine, again, I can't remember. If I say it's 4,096 steps, I'll be wrong. Someone might chime in on the private chat and correct me there. But it's super fine anyway. There you go. So I'm going to leave it set to classic 16. Dynamic pads is velocity sensitivity. Have I got a sound loaded? No, I haven't. Let me assign a sound. I did have a sound loaded, but I had the LED turned off, see? So it threw me. So dynamic pads. We've still got a little bit of work to do with the sensitivity and the threshold, and that will be done before the unit's shipped. But it's pretty good. The thing is, though, with this machine is it was trying to hark back to the old school workflow, and we'll get into that when you see multi-level, which is the same as how the original worked. Blinking pads. That is when events come. See, this is a new function that I just saw. So blinking pads, light or dark, that's lighting the pads up when an event comes into the machine or a sequence of event hits that pad. What's our default startup behavior? Do you want to load the last project, or do you want to load? It's letting you load stuff up from default behavior when we boot up. Sleep time. Some of you might have noticed in some videos that when the machine goes to sleep, it does what's called a Larson scanner, which is the same as the what you'd see on Cylons and Knight Rider. It was just a cool little thing that we did, and it's fun to code those things for the developers when they've been sweating over a feature and they get it done, and then it's something nice and easy and fun to do. Again, move and copy tracks, clear all patterns, clear all songs, clear all samples, clear everything, clear off, mate. There's that. So, and the thing is, I'm showing you through these menus, and there's stuff adding there all the time. So, but at least you're getting a sort of a general overview and a vibe of what the machine does. So the workflow in terms of how files are managed. Obviously, you have a project, and you have kits. And a kit is a collection of 32 samples. The machine has got 4 banks of 8 pads. So altogether, that is 32 samples. Only 8 of those samples at any one time can be playing. It's possible that in a version 2 or somewhere further down the line, when everything else is in the machine and we know how much power we've got left, we might be able to open that up to a little bit of DSP mixing, possibly without frying my developer's head too much and him getting upset with me saying it. But there's a good possibility that we might be able to do 16 voices, possibly more, at once, but we'd have to do that mixing in DSP. So naturally, we've got a lot of stuff to finish off on the machine first, and then we see what we're left over with in terms of power to do things like that and effects and stuff afterwards. yeah, so we load projects, we have kits. Kits are a collection of 32 samples, and when you can create and save a kit individually, and what that does is just it saves a folder full of samples that you curate, and you should be able to share those very easily, because you'll be able to pull out your SD card. Well, you don't even have to pull it out, because you can put the machine into SD card reader mode and connect it to your computer and view the files that way. But you can zip up that folder that's just WAVs, and you'll be able to share that with other people on the website or however you want to do. Similarly with projects. Now, you might have a folder on here that you've dragged. If you've got a terabyte SD card and you've just, dragged your whole sample collection or a huge sample collection onto the SD card, what happens is when you actually create a project and you start using those samples, when you first come to save the project, it will pull all of those samples that you've loaded up from all of those different folders, and it will save a copy of those samples into the project folder. So the project folder becomes a completely self-contained thing. You can load that onto someone else's machine or copy it off the SD card, do whatever you want with it, bring it back to another machine, and it's going to sound the same because everything's all self-contained. So there won't be any missing files in there. So USB-MSC mode is the thing that I just spoke about. If we go into USB-MSC mode, what it does is the machine locks you out, and if you've got USB connected and an SD card plugged into the machine, it's going to appear to your computer, Mac or PC as a hard drive, so you can just drag stuff across. It's also the fastest way to update your firmware. So you download the firmware from the website, go into USB-MSC mode here, drop it onto the folder, press back to exit MSC mode, and as soon as the machine comes back, unlocks itself to you, it'll already find the firmware and say, do you want to update it? Update flash is most likely not going to be in this menu by the time the unit ships, because this is for updating the internal flash ROM. We're reluctant to open that up because with those flash chips, it's not a huge flash chip. I think it's something like 128 megabytes, which is going to be enough for storing a load of factory content percussion kits. But with those chips, they get really expensive if you want to be able to write to them a lot. And the more that you write to these chips, the more prone they are to failure. So it's really best that maybe they get one or two update every now and again from us, but it's not something that we want you to save to the chip yourself. I hope you guys can all still hear me and everything. I'm not just talking to myself. Someone let me know. There's nothing wrong with talking to yourself, by the way, but I can see that the ACO on the stream has given up again, so I've got to reset it. That's terrible. There's not like one piece of software that just works for you, everything. That's beautiful. So there's the machine back again. I think that ACO driver goes to sleep. So where was I? I'd got to the file menu. Let's go and have a look at sync settings. Now, sync is the clock on this machine is super solid, and I'm sure other people are going to corroborate that soon. But you've got a lot of settings in here on what you can do with the clock. Now, you can set the clock source. Now, obviously, the source for this is internal. But you can look at the various different inputs for a clock source as well. MIDI DIN, USB-B, USB host port, clock in, which is your 3.5mm jack at the back. I'm not sure in what scenario you would want to do that, but why not? It's there. And then, for all of the various other outputs, though, your MIDI DIN jack, you can select, do you want to have clock out, notes out? Does it listen to transport? Does it listen to notes in? So there's a lot of stuff that you can bring in and out there. Now, also what we've got there is our output MIDI map. Now this feature isn't completely implemented yet, but as you can see me scrolling down this list, this is where you can say, hey, what MIDI note on does this pad listen to? And you'll also be able to change MIDI channel. And like the original would just take a note on and it was set on a keyboard. So there was you'd use 8 notes on a keyboard, and each one of those notes would just trigger the pad, and that was that. When we get to it with this machine, we'll be able to play each pad chromatically. And so we've got stuff like that in place. So which mode, for instance, pad A1, which mode is it in, percussion or is it in pitched? So that's going to be a real strong feature. I'm not going to go too much into that now because, as I said, that's still being developed. I think right as it is right now, we've got in but not out. But yeah, also there'll be MIDI map files. So, for instance, if you've got like an external USB MIDI controller, and I'll go back to that one that's like 16 pads in a grid, because I know a lot of people prefer to do their finger drumming like that. So, if you've got one of those, I can't think of any other manufacturers, a specific model, but we all know that they exist. If you've plugged that into your USB host, you'll be able to create text files, a MIDI map, that will look at what that device is doing and then completely set it up to use with this. And then you'll be able to share, and I'm sure plenty of people will share those map files, which is just like basically text files that are pretty simple. They're human readable text files. Hopefully everyone will be able to share those on the forum. So if you've set up a crazy old MIDI controller or something a bit squiff and esoteric to use with this, then you'll be able to come and share the file so that everyone else will be able to use it as well. So moving on from sync and clock settings, we've already been into sample mode. I've shown you that. Input monitor, which is one of my personal favorites. Let's just check we're still coming in on the ACO. We are. Input monitor, you saw me do a little video about that a while ago. Great for loads of different reasons. You could be, playing a sequence, the sequence is running, and you can live monitor it, like pick your bass guitar up, or there you go. I'm hitting the keyboard that sat next to me, and that's coming in straight into the monitor. And you can monitor any source as well. So you might have, like a deck playing or some other stuff like that, and you can bring it through this device. Again, there's pretty decent options that you change your gain levels. We've got all those different. Now that phono's hissing at the moment because it's on ×10 gain. But yeah, you can do that from any from any source that the machine can listen to. Moving on to the next screen is our pan settings. Again, remember, from all these screens, you can press the help button, right? And nearly every function there has got a complete write-out for what you can do. So if you didn't want to sit there and individually change the pan for every track that you're doing, you can look at help there. F1 pans everything hard left, center, pan hard right, center all. And you've got, which is it? F7, is it? No, it's not F7. What you can basically do is do alternate pairs, which is what you're going to do if you're going to be using stereo samples. So like 1 and 3, left and right, and stuff like that. Was it hard? Was it F7 or F8? This one, right? So you can see 1 is left, 2 is right, 3 is left, 4 is right. So you don't have to sit there doing all of that yourself. I'm just going to put everything back in the center for now. That's our pan screen. Effects. Now, there's not an awful lot in this section yet, and I explained why there isn't just a little while ago. But when there are some effects in the machine, this is where they will live. Currently, what we've got in here is the analog filter section. Now, it's often a bone of contention talking about the original filters because everybody wants to know, oh, is it using the same analog filters? Yes, but there are several different types of filters in use going on. As I already alluded to earlier, there is an anti-aliasing filter that's on the inputs on the original. That's an analog filter there. And then there are also separate analog filters on all of the outputs. The old trick, some guys will remember, is you'd half pull a jack out to get a filtered output or a non-filtered output. Obviously, we wanted to do away with that, but we've replicated the original analog, analog circuitry for all of those, including I'm getting attacked by a mosquito here, including the SSM chips, which is the same chips have been re-released, but a company is now called SSI. and they've miniaturized them into a nice small little package. But we use 2 of those, which is the same as the original dynamic filters. And then we've got channel 3, 4, and 5, and 6. Again, then have their own fixed frequency low pass filters. Obviously 7 and 8 on the original didn't have a filter, neither have we. But just to explain that these filters here, what you're doing is you're actually using logic on the board, pulling real analog filter circuitry in or out of circuit that goes to the output jacks. So that's those there. On top of those filters, then we've got the DSP filters, which you see me fiddling on these knobs. Still more work to be done there, but a lot of people already like the sound of them. We're going to do some things like Q compensation, and hopefully we're going to be able to have different models of filters, different styles of filters that can be applied to each of these knobs. I can already hear my software guy going, "You bastard!" But yeah, I'm not promising that stuff to come in when the unit ships, but we've got a lifetime of melding this machine into the machine we want it to be. Now, save. I don't actually want to save now. Save is broken out. As you've noticed, we've already got this file menu, and we've got save project as, save kit, and all of that in the file menu. But rather than having to go shift, file, and then scroll down, go save your project, if you're in the middle of doing something, this save here is just a one-click save button. So there is that. What should I do next? I suppose I should talk a little bit about the sequencer. I'll quickly go through these functions, which are the same. You already heard me do like the multi-slice thing. I glazed over that. There'll be another more in-depth video coming of that. Level, same as the original. Pitch. Now, what I always like to do to show the aliasing effect is it always sounds best on musical things to me. So I'm going to load up a sample. Oh, that's me. Yeah, from side to side. Come on. Where is it? Where's my samples? Right. Right, so yeah, Rhodes chords always sound really good on the aliasing. Now remember, we're only on the classic 16 there. So what I'll do real quick is show you, if I change that pitch resolution to fine, you'll see how many different levels. Well, you won't, because there's loads of them. You're not hearing any discernible steps there. Right, okay, thank you. No audio. Right, there we go. Fuck this thing. So I'm using OBS, and my audio is UAD Apollo, right? And the last time I tried to do a live stream, and then found out again the other day that it does the same thing, is it does loads of clicking. And OBS doesn't natively support ACO. So, right, there we go. I'm sorry. Where did you hear any of that when I loaded up the Rhodes patch? Anyway, well, you knew what I was explaining because you could hear my microphone. I just don't think you could hear the machine. So I've put that back to classic 16 for now. Now, if we were to turn off classic mode, you'll get a lot less aliasing because we've got interpolation going on now. Take it out of hi-fi mode and you hear the aliasing coming up straight away. Now, again, all of those comparison things, I'm going to leave down to other people because they're going to enjoy doing that. Envelope. Currently, all envelope is doing is decay. But in the future, what we're hoping to do is open that up so that we've got AD, SR, we've got envelopes for amplitude envelopes and also pitch envelopes. And hopefully we're going to do filter envelopes as well. Now, it's unlikely that we're going to get the full envelopes for the shipping firmware release. But it's on the cards, and that's what we've been talking about. Loop slice I already went through. Multi-mode. When you go into multi-mode, again, this is the same as the OG. You've then got multi-level, multi-pitch, multi-envelope, and multi-slice. So, for instance, if you're playing a sample... let me just... put the envelope back up. Multi-level will play all of these slices back at different levels, and on the OG that was a little trick people would do to fake a delay effect. You'd start off like that and sequence those into tracks. I'm getting paranoid now that the ACO is going to drop out of it again. So tomorrow what I'm going to have to do is buy an audio interface that is not as good as this UAD Apollo and doesn't crash ACO all the time. So yeah, multi-level does that. It's also good to get some variation in stuff when you're doing it. Multi-pitch, you can probably guess. Again, you're going to be like creating melodies and stuff like that with stuff like that. I think you can probably guess. Therefore, what multi-envelope does. Right, done that. Filters. These filters that I'm adjusting now are done in DSP. They're not the analog filters. Okay, so there's let's have a look at the sequencer. So for what I'm gonna have to load a kit up for that. Let me load up a little kit that I saved earlier. Right, there shouldn't be anything there. So let's change the pattern length, because currently you'll get a playhead go across there so you can see where you are in the measure. So I'm going to change pattern length. Can't change that while you're playing, as I'm getting told off. So we're going to just change that to 4 measures. And you see that the playhead going over there, you can see intersections at the end of each measure. Now, we can turn the metronome on at this point. We want it on during recording. It's already on during recording. And you can guess what style of music I'm going to create. You're not going to get any hip-hop out of me, I'm sorry. I'm going to insert some notes so that then I can go and show you swing and a few other things like that. I must have quantized set to something weird or something after I've been through all of those menus and showed you out everything. I've messed it. I'm going to reboot the machine real quick. I think quantize was all messed up or something. Let's hope we still get yeah, we still got audio result. Okay, so let me load that kit up again. Okay, change the pattern length to 4 measures. Right, so that is your standard sort of, you know, tape recorder input method of recording in a sequence that everyone knows and loves. Now I've just recorded all those notes in, then we can also do this in piano roll edit, which is our step program mode. Now again, when you're in all of these modes, you can always press the help button to show you what's going on. If I select the kick pattern, it will make this easier to explain what's going on. Now, you can hover to any point here with the encoder and scroll around the pattern, and you can see I'm scrolling to the end of the measure there. You can also zoom in and out and change the quantize amount. So you can go in, zoom in, change the triplets or something like that, and this cursor is moving around in different degrees there that you can see. So if I'm going to change that back to where I was before, so the playhead there is moving around. If I go in here on to any step that I want to here with the encoder and I can press the pad, it will enter that pad into the sequence. So now you'll hear a doom doop, you should hear it. Where was I? There. Right, so you'll hear obviously a, yeah. So right there on in between 3 and 4, if I want to, you can just press them in there, or you can press erase and get rid of it like that. So you see it disappeared out the thing, and I'll do that one again there to pull it out. Also, on top of being able to do the step edit mode, and of course you can switch to different banks now, and these are all going to come up in this piano roll. It's called piano roll, right? Yes, of course it is. You can also go into TR mode. So if I press F2 when we're in this screen, make sure that we're set on the, we're going to take off record edit so that when I hit the pad, it doesn't try to insert a note. And the kick was on, pad 6 there. So I'm going to press F2, and what happens now is we've gone into TR mode. And all of these 16 buttons up here above the pads, instead of being mute solos, turn into what you would classically see on a TR drum machine input method. I keep getting really paranoid and checking that the ACO hasn't dropped, but it's still there. So yeah, so we've got TR mode, and you can see the chaser light going across the pattern. Now it's stopped, and I'll show you why in a second. It's going to loop back round, and now it's stopped. If I turn the encoder and jump into the next bar, you can chase it. So, in other words, each time you go into the next pattern or the next measure along, if I take out this last kick in the first measure, you can see it coming back into the piano roll or coming out again. I hope you can see that. It's coming in or out. And then if you scroll with the encoder into the next measure, you'll see that light come back on because it's taking the notes from that pattern. So it follows you, is basically what I'm saying. So from here, we can enter some more, as much as we like. So when it comes back, yeah, we all know what a TR mode does, really, don't we? We don't really need too much of an explanation on that stuff. So that goes through some of the sequencer stuff. Obviously, let me add in. I'm going to drop into. I'm going to drop out of step edit mode. Right, I'm going to use a little sample that I pulled out of one of my favourite artists' tracks, and I asked him today, and it was cool with him for me to use that, so I can't be... I'm just trying to shuffle my notes around here. So I'm going to put in a little sample along to this beat, so that and I can start doing swing and stuff and make it sound a little bit more apparent. 120 BPM, yes. Oh, I had the filter turned off. Yes, I make house music, okay? Right, so what I'm going to do now is utilize multi-level on this little conga, whatever it is, patch. So, to give a little bit of movement when recording. Right, now, again, with these little samples that we just put in there, with that little conga patch, where is it? It's there. So we'll see these little notes come in there. Our playhead's moving. Right, so there they are, those ones there. Now, what if I want to change this? I can go to pitch, change it, I'm going to change it a little bit more subtle than that. And then what it will do is it'll have changed that event for me. So you can go in and surgically change anything, like a filter position, an envelope position, on each event in the step editor. So we should, let me solo that so we can hear it. Oh. Excuse me. Oh, that's because I'm in TR mode. Right, so now we can program an event there at a different pitch. Right, so you can go in there and you can do that with different, you can program a different level, program a different envelope time, program a different filter position, and yeah, do a load of stuff like that. Again, that was a little brain fart from me because I got lost. So, when there's no lights on the side, this whole thing is in mixer mode, right? So, this is a long sample, so it's not going to do much until it comes back around on the bar. So what I can also show you is what we're also going to have in here is live looping. Now the live looping we've only just started doing. We've just started getting it all into the firmware now, so it's going to be getting beta tested really soon. Now, some things to say about live looping mode is we have to make some sacrifices because of the amount of memory that it uses. So if you choose to have live looper mode on, what it does is it gets rid of bank D. So you lose a bank of 8 samples, but you then gain 8 live looper channels. So this is the bit where I'm probably going to mess up because we literally had this about not even 48 hours in the firmware. So a channel here is waiting, this is the channel that's selected for our live loop, and it's going around in this loop waiting for me to hit this pad, at which turn it will turn into red, and then we'll be able to add something. So let me vibe out of it a little bit. Right, so I'm going to try and record something in live. So it's looping round now. So that's just recorded that in. I can stop it recording now. I knew I was going to mess up my phrasing at the end of that. Now, at this point on this one looper channel track, I could have carried on recording and overdubbing and overdubbing and overdubbing over the top, and you can do that 8 times. So I think the biggest one I've seen only does 5 channels, but we'll see. So at this point, I would want to obviously then plug my bass guitar in and do something on this channel. I'm not going to do that. Now, I'll bring those down in volume a minute. Also, then what you'll be able to do from after doing these little live loops, you've obviously noticed that if I go back into the other banks and play this, if I drop back down to bank D where our live loops now live, I can bring them in just like any other channel, and you can filter them. No, you can't filter them yet. But once you're on those live looper channels, once you've sort of stuck stuff in that you want to do, what we'll be able to do then is say, hey, I want to convert this channel back out of a loop channel now and put that in as a sound and use it as a sequenceable sound, or just put it back into like a normal sampler channel, which I think should be a pretty useful thing, especially if there's a bunch of you all doing stuff at the same time. I've still got ACO. There you go. I don't have to be paranoid about it. So, I mean, there's loads of stuff I've not touched on, but I'm sure I've been boring you all. I have no idea how long we've been talking about this now. We talked about moving and copy tracks. We talked about step programming mode a little bit. We talked about screens. We talked about the menus. We talked about the physical dimensions and the weight. I think we've done a lot. We've gone through a lot of stuff. I mean, the intention of this video was really because there was a lot of people saying, you know, I don't know if I want to buy this thing or not, because you haven't really told us much about it. You haven't really told us about the specifications and what it can do and all of that. So I've gone through a lot of the stuff that it does now, even though my demonstration skills might not be that good. What you're going to get next is, you know, these beta testers are doing loads of videos, and when the machine ships, obviously you'll be seeing some magazine reviews and some video reviews from some of the outlets that we know. I can't talk about them yet, but they've all a load of guys there are on board for doing reviews and stuff, and you know that's what they do day in and day out. So you're going to get a much better review, and obviously I'll continue to demonstrate new features and stuff as they come on. So I guess what I'll do is I'll try and answer some questions if there's if oh my god, the chat thing is huge now. Yeah, I'm not answering all that stuff. And there's going to be a big delay, isn't there? So I'm not going to name any names of the guys that are doing stuff, but all of that stuff's going to become apparent real soon, you know. Kenny, do you want to? Kenny, if you tell me on the business chat line on the hotline. By the way, the wines had to get me through tonight. I sat. You know why it was sat there for 13 minutes before the stream started? Is because I was on with Kenny saying I don't think I can do this, mate. I'm gonna fall to pieces, but we got through it, I think, in the end. Questions about ship date. I'm not going to talk about shipping in this video because this was really going out to talk about what the machine's doing. We all know that shipping is imminent. The next major shipping update is going to be the second the things are on the boat, which I'm waiting for the things to be on the boat any day. And in fact, just before I went on the stream, I got an update from the contract manufacturer. They've sent me some videos, and I think what those videos are is them the actual semi-assembled units coming off production line, going into shipping boxes. Obviously, there's going to be more updates on what's going on with shipping very soon, and I'm hoping to still be shipping in October. It's not likely that it's going to be the first week of October now, because they're still not on the boat. So I'll give you more of an update on shipping as soon as I can, and that's going to be within the next couple of days. But you already know we're really not far away from shipping. It's the machine's built. We're not messing around with it anymore. We're just all we got to really do is get them out the door. Come on, Ken, feed me. What do you want to know about the turntable preamp? Actually, the guy that designed the turntable preamp, it was in the chat earlier. I won't name him. Yeah, what is it that you specifically want to know about the turntable preamp? What I will tell you is they were rather expensive OPA op amps that are in that circuit. So yeah, they're not a proper active phono preamp in there, not the price is going to go up. The price is going to have to go up soon, and again, that's what getting this video out was to, you know, show the machine working and what it can do. The price has to go up. There's nothing I can do about that. You know, that this project has gone, you know, with the overrun of the amount of time it's taken to get the thing out. Building the beta tester units is incredibly expensive, especially with the back and forth for getting it, every iteration of a prototype and everything coming over, and you're like, right, okay, send me these, but everything has to come like overnight by DHL, and you just pay like every little iteration you're paying like a grand, a couple of grand here just to get some stuff shipped because you need it there. The price has to go up. The price has to go up. I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but it's going to go up in about a week's time. I think like $1,400, $1,500 is a very fair price for this machine, considering, you know, what the market's like for other machines and other stuff that's out there. I get that there are machines out there, even machines that have recently been released, machines that you know, do more than this machine will potentially be able to do, but they're not built as well. They're too convoluted, and you know, this machine was a passion project for us, making it, you know, like a Rolls Royce, making it beautiful to touch, beautiful to look at, you know, even down to things like spending over $1 on each fader cap, when, you know, most machines out there spend about, probably on average, about 3 to 4 cents on a fader cap. So it's a quality product. There's the answer to that. They want to know about how USB MIDI works with the unit. Okay, so one to that is like, in which direction, you know, the machine receiving MIDI or the machine sending out, and so, I mean, I'll just talk about it a little bit, I guess. The MIDI USB device, which is the one that you use to connect to your computer or your door or whatever. So if you want to use this in SD card memory drive mode, it will communicate back and forth over that USB link with your computer, and it will do MIDI and clock and transport control and everything, no on off, all of that stuff. And it's just a standard MIDI class compliant driver, so you don't need a driver basically. We're going to have audio, USB audio going back to the machine, possibly even the other way as well, but I can't give you too many details about that yet because I don't know. I know we've done some tests, efficacy tests, but not actually stuff that's in the firmware yet. But that will be coming for the audio. Now on the USB host, this has internal drivers, whatever you call them, for controlling USB MIDI devices. So, for instance, if you pick up one of them devices that's USB only, but it's like 16 pads and it has the 8 faders or whatever it is on the top, You can plug that in, and if you go through some of my old videos, you'll see me using that thing. This will enumerate an external USB MIDI class. As long as it's MIDI class compliant USB, this will look after it. And that was when I also talked a little bit about MIDI mapping. So for instance, if you've got some esoteric MIDI controller that you set up to use with this device, and you know, you configure everything to work with your other device, it would be nice of you to then export that MIDI map and upload it to the forum for other people to use, should they have a similar MIDI controller. If that's the question you were asking me about USB MIDI, then I hope so. They want to know about the analog clock outs and how that works. So I haven't got any gear that's using that down here with me at the moment. But so for instance, if you've got like a Juno 60, or you've got you know, the little what's the one I've got up there? The little Korg, not the Prolog. Well, I've tested it with the Prolog as well, but the other one, the Mini Log, they have like little jack inputs for clock. This thing will spit out the clock, but it'll also listen to it. Something also that's very interesting that you can do with it is, and I can probably show you that if I switch back to the device. Oh, it was in sleep mode. You didn't get to see Knight Rider, Cylon. If I go into the sync menu and look at the clock out jack. You probably can't read that, can you? Because it's a little bit blurry. You've got function, what's it outputting, 16th notes or 8th notes, run, stop, reset. But what you can also do there is select a track, right? So you can program a pad, one of these pads with a rhythm, like and push that out of the clock jack. And use that to advance. I use that on a trigger input for other drum machines, or use that to trigger how the clock advances on an arpeggiator on other stuff. Again, you can change the pulse length, and you can also send swing amount to just the clock output jack. So you got to hand it to my software developers that like they think of the weirdest shit, but it's awesome. All these little, you know, these little features that are on there that weren't in our initial remit. We very much, and that's why you haven't got a user manual already, and that's why there wasn't such a watertight spec that was there at the very start of the project. The start of the project was, hey guys, I want to make this drum machine. Are you all on board? Loads of you were. Helped me get it into production, and me and the developers sit there and we're like, yo, it'd be fucking cool if we could do this little feature. Should we do that? And that's how stuff like that gets born. It's not like, oh, that's not in the spec, we're not doing that. We work really agile with each other. They put up with me, and I don't have to do anything to put up with them because they're all awesome. Why do you sound British but you're in Florida? Are you a fake? No, my background is I've worked with a world-renowned DJ producer, Ian Carey, for over a decade, running record labels and co-producing with him a lot of old house music and funky house. And he lived in Spain at the time. And when Barack Obama came into power, he and his family decided that they'd move back from Europe and come back, and they just landed here in Florida. So I followed them to West Palm Beach, and we had a couple of recording studios here. And I went out one night and met my wife, and then several years later now we've got Isla. Isla come around and enthused me to do something with my life and start doing this stuff. Hence Isla Instruments. That's not really about the machine though, is it? Come on. Wood ends, wood sides. Curry Cases, who is a super talented carpenter. I think you call him something different in the States, don't you? Me and him have coming up with a couple of. I'll show you them. But they're not necessarily the ones you're going to get. Give me a moment. Now, because we had loads of different, we had loads of different options with what we could do with the wood panels. But we don't want to give too much choice out there because it becomes too much of an admin problem for us to sort out. So the ones you see on my machine are pretty much going to be one set, but with a slightly darker, more figured walnut. They do look so beautiful, don't they? And that's wrong with me. I should have done this demo with the aluminium sides on there, and that's not me trying to sell you sides, although it obviously worked. Obviously, it will come with the aluminium sides, so there'll be the dark walnut set, and there'll also be like a lighter set. So yeah, we had so many different options, but we're only going to provide 2 sets. So, I mean, other stuff, you can always jump on the Facebook or Instagram and ask questions. Sorry that I was fumbling around a lot of it, but there we go. Hope you learned something. There we go. Nice one, guys.